record real quick. Okay, you are
Okay,
good
very
to good to go. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. All right. I'm calling to order the Boulder Planning Board meeting on November 15th, 2022. We have 4 members present, so we have a quorum, and I'm calling the meeting to order as of now. And I think we'll start out with either Devin or Amanda reading our rules.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to go ahead here and share my screen.
Thanks, John. I'll actually walk us through this. We do have some members from the public, so I'll go ahead and walk us through these slides.
Okay.
So thank you everyone for your participation today. My name is Vivian Castro-Wooldridge. I'm the Planning Engagement Strategist for the City of Boulder, and I help facilitate the public engagement parts of these meetings. So as always, Planning Board starts with open comment from community members. And so we'll be talking a little bit about what public participation will look like in this meeting. And I see there are no public hearings on today's agenda. So as I mentioned, we'll start with open comment. And we want our participants to know that the city is really striving to lean into a vision co-created by the city staff and community for productive, meaningful, and inclusive civic conversations. And the vision is really designed to promote free conversation and dialogue while also recognizing that we want to make sure everyone who is participating feels both emotionally and physically safe, and that we're allowing for lots of different viewpoints in our meetings. We have a lot of information on our website about what we call our Productive Atmospheres vision. And there's a number of rules of decorum that are found in the Boulder Revised Code. And we have some general guidelines that are advisory in nature to share with all of our meeting participants this evening from the community as well as planning board and city staff. And we ask that all remarks and testimony raised tonight be related to city business. We will not allow any participant to make threats or use any form of intimidation against any person in this session. Obscenities, racial epithets, and other speech and behavior that disrupts the meeting or otherwise makes it impossible for us to continue is prohibited. And we do also ask that participants identify themselves by the name they're commonly known by and display their whole name so we can call on you properly. Next slide, please. So we're all in the Zoom webinar format. This means that participants are allowed to speak their testimony, but we will not be turning on video for community members because of security concerns in this platform. And I wanted to point out there's no pre-existing list for signing up to participate today. So if you're in the meeting, we'll welcome you in this next section to raise your hand and let us know and let the chair know that you'd like to give some testimony or some comments. And on your screen, you'll see a couple ways to do this. At the very bottom of your screen, you should see a horizontal menu that has 3 clickable items. And if you click on the hand icon, it'll raise a hand next to your name and we'll know to call on you. If you have an expanded menu, you can also get to the raise hand icon by clicking on reactions. And I do not believe that anybody is attending by phone, so I'll skip that part for now. No interpretation at this meeting tonight, so I won't go over that. And if you could turn on the live transcripts, Amanda, that could be helpful. And again, I want to stress that the public participation part of the meeting coming up is a chance for you to share topics outside of the agenda with the planning board. I think that covers the basics. Over to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So our first item on the agenda is to deal with the minutes of August 16th, our meeting of August 16th. And as everyone had a chance to see them, and I think there have been some revisions made that I hope everyone has also seen. And I'd be interested if anyone would care to move to approve them. Laura, you're muted, Laura.
Sorry. What was the date on those minutes?
August 16th.
August 16th. I move to approve the minutes of August 16th.
Okay. Do we have Mark is seconding? Okay.
Sorry, I thought I unmuted. I second, yes.
Okay, I could see your hand and mouth moving. Okay, all in favor, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 5. The minutes are unanimously adopted, so thank you. Okay, next we move into our public participation section, and this is the time when people can address planning board on any issue they wish to discuss. We have no public hearing items. That means you can feel free to raise any issue in the public participation section that you wish. This will be the only time when there is public comment allowed in the meeting, and so now to let us know whatever's on your mind. And I'm not sure who will be running this, whether it's Vivian or Vivian
I can do
will
it.
be managing the public participation section now.
Thank you, John. So I just asked that the public participating raises their hand. I already see one hand up, and you'll have 3 minutes to share your comments, and Amanda will be sharing the timer. Okay, please go ahead, David Bieck.
Hi, I'm David Beek with Arcadia Architecture, and I don't know if this is the right time, but I'm just letting the board know that I'm the architect for Kane Travel, and I'm here to answer any questions if they should arise. Kane Travel is requesting that you do not call up the project because they are pleased with the staff recommendation. And I would just like to point out that the increase in building height by 4 feet is only for the elevator tower, and the rest of the roof is approximately the same height as existing, maybe a little bit more than a foot higher. So that's all I have to say, but would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. It's
Thank
good to
you,
know
David.
you'll be here in case there's any need for further information when we deal with that matter.
Okay, thank you, David. Anybody else? I don't see any hands, but we'll just give it a couple of seconds. Lynn Siegel, please go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Well, I don't know why people can't design their thing with 4 feet less to include the elevator, because the elevator falls in with everything. And I'm tired, exhausted of seeing planning board approve one after the next variance for height. 7 of them for 311 Mapleton on the WUI, the Wildland interface. This is what the planning board does. This is the history of what the planning board serves, how they serve this community. Now, as far as Folsom and Pearl and Spruce, you should go back to the first concept plan, the one that's legitimate. First of all, this thing should never have happened in the first, because you need to rezone things so that we have a service or two left in Boulder. Pretty soon, you're going to put housing in the grocery stores. You're going to put housing every single square inch of this place. And I'm sorry, I don't buy the need for it anymore. Housing just creates the demand for more housing, which creates the demand for my jobs. Underpaid jobs, which create more demand for more housing. So the first plan with Ollie from Pace at Folsom and Pearl and Spruce needs to go back to the first iteration, which was apartments. And you know what? Rents, it's not a big distinction between rent and ownership anymore, because our property taxes, someone up the street told me in Knollwood, they're paying $30,000 a year for property taxes. And you think they're not going to pass that on to the renters, if they have renters in their place? You think the property managers aren't going to pass it along? It's like Ali said, it's all about the land value, as if Boulder didn't know that. Him coming from Aspen largely, a lot of his jobs are in Aspen, very, very lush, high-end jobs in Aspen. This is what we're doing in Boulder. This is how planning is working. And we're demolishing an 8,000 square foot rock house on the urban wildlife interface, basically at Baseline and Flagstaff. And it's just breezed through Landmarks Design Review Committee, never even made it to the Landmarks Board, cannot be reversed by the city council. Who runs this town? Who's at the wheel? A Huntington, James, and Hunter house. Beautiful estate, 8,000 square feet, $6.1 million, so that some folks from England can come here and tear it, demolish it and put up as a second home. That's what we're doing in Boulder. Think again. Done.
Thank you, Lynn. Okay, I see no other hands raised, so that concludes the public participation part of the meeting. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you. All right. We'll move now to a discussion of dispositions and call-ups. We have one item to deal with as a potential call-up, and that is a site review amendment for an addition to increase floor area of an existing technical office use from 6,351 square feet to 9,315 square feet. Does anyone wish to inquire about this or call up this matter? Mark?
Thanks, John. So I have a question and kind of a statement about this particular project. But first I want to put everyone at ease. I'm not going to call them. But I do have some questions. How does staff view the TDM plan as was submitted for this recommendation to approve this? And if the applicant wants to address this or whatever, but anyway, I'm curious about staff's view of the TDM plan for this project. And I have a kind of a detailed question, and that is, as I went to using the mapping tool that I've recently become familiar with, there was a plan submitted on 3.3 and a plan submitted on 7.7. And I don't think there's much of any difference, but if there is, I'd like to know about that. And does staff view this TDM plan as adequate?
Thanks for the question, Mark. First, I would say that Shabnam Bista, our case manager, couldn't be here this evening. She has some family obligations. And we don't have anyone from transportation engineering here. The only thing I think I could say is that in looking at staff's analysis, staff found that the proposed TDM plan is consistent with the toolkit and the parameters that have been adopted, by the city for these kinds of developments. So I think our transportation engineering staff found that the offsets provided by the TDM were going to be suitable for the use.
Okay, thanks. So I'm just giving everyone a warning here. I'm just going to talk about this TDM plan using this project as an example. So the applicant, again, I'm not going to call this up, but I hope that the applicant takes this message back to the applicant's consultant, LSC Engineering, and I hope that staff hears my message, and I'm only speaking for myself as a planning board member tonight. And that is, what I'm going to say is that the continued use of the draft 2011 toolkit, in my opinion, and treating that toolkit as though it was adopted, as though it was code, it shouldn't be done. It should stop by both applicants and staff as a mechanism to approve or deny projects going forward. So the LSC, which is one common consultant, we have others that develop TDM plans for projects that are brought to us. They're not the only ones, but they are certainly one that uses this frequently. This is a plan that was a draft in 2011 that was never adopted. It's not part of the code. And if you read the TDM portion of the code, it doesn't refer anywhere to this. So we have a TDM, we have code that refers to TDM plans that are required. And our code does not refer anywhere to this draft ordinance. And so, so I find that this 2011 draft is outdated, it's inadequate, it's old, it doesn't reflect the realities of the world today. And I'm not asking, I want to acknowledge that I'm not trying to put something on staff's work plan. We know that from last Thursday's council meeting that staff has a work plan as directed by council. And so I'm not suggesting that this be part of staff's work plan. It's not my place to do that. I simply want to say that we have a TDM code and it doesn't include this thing that keeps being brought up. What we have is a code that is two things. It is flexible, yay, and it's subjective. There are very few objective requirements in our TDM code. And so there's a tension between being flexible and subjective. And so I would ask that both staff and applicants, and staff convey this to applicants, that when you develop a TDM plan, you look at the code and you think, gee, I should be creative. I should take advantage of this flexibility. I should be forward thinking. I should think about the city's climate goals, our equity goals, our transportation goals, as stated in the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan and in the city's Transportation Master Plan, and use your ability to create a TDM plan that acknowledges the electrification of cars, the electrification of bikes, the sharing of transportation resources, how we have adopted Vision Zero for the safety of our citizens, and make Vision Zero a part of your parking lot, your corner. And and stop using what is currently this tool that is kind of checking a box. So, I view implementation of transportation demand management just like implementation of the American with Disabilities Act, that this is something you do. You have a TDM plan when you're expanding or changing a use or going through a site review. And I'm not making this as a threat or anything. I would just simply say that if plans continue to come forward with what I think are inadequate TDM plans, then they're far more likely to be called up. And that means more work for everyone. And I think that the flexibility and the subjectivity of the plan can actually be a tool in the favor of developers and applicants and staff. And so I would urge us to use our creativity and our flexibility to present projects that come to us for approval or for call up or lack of call up, and to use your creative thoughts about your TDM plan. So again, I'm not trying to rain on this applicant's parade. I just using them as an example of what I think is a deficiency in our system without trying to add to staff's workload. So that's the end of my little speech.
Okay, well, thank you, Mark. That certainly sounded like a heartfelt plea to everyone concerned. And I have to say, You were very persuasive, so thank you. All right, does ML?
I just have, well, yes, thank you, Mark. I really appreciate the clarity with which you approach that particular subject, and hopefully, yes, it will resonate where it needs to. The only thing I wanted to talk about, say, I'm not going to call this up, but I think there was a member of the public saying that, implying that there was a height variance being proposed here, and there isn't. This building is all in compliance with the regulations for that zoning, and there really isn't anything that they're asking for beyond that. So I see Charles nodding. That's correct. Yes. So I just wanted to make that point, that nobody's asked for a variance here. It's just straight up use by right, and I am not going to call it up either. I think it's a fine plan, and I wish them good luck in getting it built.
Thank you, ML. I have a question of staff. We dealt with this land and project several weeks ago when a vacation request was requested to move the sidewalk and bike path around on the northwest corner of the property, which we raised no objection to. I'm just wondering, if that land had not been vacated by the city, what consequences would that have had for this proposal in terms of how the city dealt with it?
Ultimately, I think the applicant would have had to design around it to ensure that we had that level of connectivity on the corner there to support the sidewalk and multimodal function. So ultimately it would have forced a design change, I think. So shifting the building or chamfering the corner to help support that connection.
And that would have been required because they would have had a setback. They wouldn't have met the setback requirements.
It's less of a setback issue and just more of a site planning issue and how to accommodate, the building and the ultimate design of the sidewalk connection there. So a setback is something that can be modified through site review if it had to. I think in this case, it was just a preferable site design issue.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks very much. I just couldn't resist inquiring about that.
I think there's also some grade on the corner there, John, that they were trying to account for too in the new design. So I think that might have driven some of their design decisions as well.
Okay. Thank you. Well, any further questions? All right, seeing it looks like we won't be calling this up since no one has indicated they see the need. So congratulations to the applicant on moving past us, I guess, at this point. So, all right. So that is the only call-up issue we're dealing with tonight. So we'll move ahead now to an information item. We have no public hearing item tonight. And so we're going to be dealing with the comprehensive planning of Boulder Junction Phase 2. And congratulations to Christopher on finally getting us to deal with it. I have to apologize for the delays that have taken place so long, but I'm glad we're finally able to focus on it now.
Totally
so please,
fine.
Please take it away.
Great, thanks. No apologies necessary. And I will do my very best to fill the impressive shoes of Sarah Course, our principal city planner, who is the project manager for this project, but is unfortunately out of the office here this evening. So I will fill in. And I'm also joined by Vivian Castro-Wooldridge, who you know, who is serving as our community engagement strategist for this project. So let me go ahead and share some screen.
Christopher, just so you know, your audio is kind of fading in and out a little bit, maybe hard for some people to hear. If there's anything you can do to strengthen that.
I will hopefully get that resolved. Does it sound any better now?
Sounds about the same to me.
Okay. Why don't I proceed really quickly? Why don't I proceed for a few slides, and if it's still problematic, you can let me know. Does that work?
Yes.
Okay, sounds great. All right, well, we'll get started here. And so as John has introduced, my name is Christopher Johnson. I'm the Comprehensive Planning Manager for our Planning and Development Services team. And I'm joined here with Vivian to walk through the presentation on the scope of work and community engagement approach for Boulder Junction. This project is probably a little bit unique in terms of the planning efforts that you as planning board have seen recently, in that we are building upon an existing plan, starting to move into implementation of the second half of that. So it's a little bit different than, say, the East Boulder Sub-Community Plan that was really something that was generated from scratch. So this project itself will move along at a slightly faster pace, with a slightly different community engagement approach than maybe you've seen recently. But as you probably are aware of and understand, this is the Transit Village Area Plan is an existing plan. We are proposing to sort of shift away from the Transit Village Area Plan, or TVAP nomenclature, a bit. It's a bit of planning jargon, and really I think the community is more comfortable, or just understands this area known as Boulder Junction. So we're going to move towards that kind of name, and moving forward, if we do use the TVAP acronym or refer to the Transit Village Area Plan, it'll be when we're referring specifically to the plan itself, and then use Boulder Junction as a reference to the project and the neighborhood. So we'll cover two main topics this evening. We'll offer some preliminary background on the plan, on the existing Transit Village Area Plan, and then describe our preliminary scope of work and the implementation of phase 2. And then we'll also go through the initial approach for the community engagement for the project. So before we go on, I want to just remind everybody of the sort of 3 questions that we are looking for some response and comments from you this evening. So first of all, does Planning Board have any feedback on the draft scope of work? Does Planning Board have any feedback on incorporating additional placemaking detail as part of the plan amendment, which we'll explain that in a little bit more detail here shortly. And then finally, any feedback from you on the draft approach for community engagement. So there's 2 kind of primary outcomes of the project itself. The first would be to update the Transit Village Area Plan through a plan amendment here, and that would address potentially some changes to the plan's land use, proposed land uses, mobility connections, and the placemaking elements that are described for the phase 2 area. We are focusing specifically on those 3 topics. We are not proposing to start from scratch and rework the entire plan or its goals and recommendations. Those are all still very valid. So we want to be targeted and strategic with our approach on just those few items. The second outcome would ultimately be an implementation strategy for the phase 2 area. So that'll have a variety of components related to phasing, financing strategies for the infrastructure improvements that are necessary, and also some regulatory updates. So that could be changes to the zoning code that would apply to this area, expansion of the general improvement districts that currently apply in the phase 1 area. So a couple of different regulatory mechanisms that could be included within that implementation strategy. Phase 2, and really this project itself, implementing phase 2 of this plan, was identified as one of the top priorities by City Council. We've been able to build our team back to full capacity here, and are able to finally begin working on this priority project, and we're excited to get going here quickly. Just a quick refresher. So the area plan itself was originally adopted in 2007, establishes a vision to really guide development within this Boulder Junction area. And then there is also an implementation plan that was also adopted around that same time, 2007, that really identifies what would be implemented and by who and how and when. Most of that implementation plan is focused on the phase 1 area and sort of outlines some of the infrastructure improvements and things like that, but it does make some references to the phase 2 area and includes a couple of key infrastructure items that would need to be improved as part of this implementation. So just to orient everybody kind of geographically, Boulder Junction is generally bound by Valmont on the north, Foothills Parkway on the east, the railroad and the North Boulder Farmers Ditch on the south side, so just south of Pearl Parkway there, and then 30th Street on the west. There is a small portion that's to the west of 30th Street, and that's generally the location of the new fire station number 3 that is starting to move forward. So the two main phases that were identified within the plan itself for implementation of the land use changes and infrastructure improvements, you can see here on the graphic. So phase 1 was generally everything west of the railroad tracks. Phase 2 is generally everything to the east. That area with the fire station that's on the west side of 30th was actually identified as phase 2A and was the land uses were updated in the last Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan update back in 2021. So the focus of this project, you can see outlined there in the blue on the right-hand side, east of the railroad, and that's the area of the primary focus for this project. So in order to move forward with phase 2 and really initiate this project, the implementation plan sets forward 3 criteria, essentially that we need to be able to demonstrate that the phase 1 area has been substantially completed. There's a market study requirement to confirm the market support and demand for the land uses that are proposed in phase 2, and then a plan for providing those major infrastructure improvements that would be necessary to really facilitate redevelopment or occur at the same time as redevelopment. So staff is already moving forward in the process of completing what we're calling the phase 1 substantial completion report. It will include a variety of quantitative and qualitative information about the development that's been completed so far. A few major takeaways that I think are important to identify that were part of the phase 1 work is that there was a number of regulatory updates that were included at the beginning of that effort. So there's been changes to the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan land use map. There was the creation of a form-based code that applies to the phase 1 area. There were some additional code changes that really ensure development doesn't outpace the infrastructure and making sure that future development contributes to the multimodal transportation goals of this area. And then there were 2 general improvement districts that were established to help pay for and ultimately manage the parking structure and TDM programs in this particular area. A couple of other things that have come out of the ground literally within phase 1 is that there is approximately 1,500 new residential units and over 300 permanently affordable housing units as part of phase 1. So it's about 20%, a little bit more than that. There's a new hotel, restaurants, the preservation of the historic depot building, a bunch of pedestrian and bicycle and multimodal improvements through the street infrastructure, and some additional flood protection and greenway enhancements. And of course, the RTD Regional Transit Hub, which currently is unfortunately very underutilized due to service cuts, but we are very hopeful and through conversations with RTD, it's anticipated that there will be some level of bus service that comes back to that regional bus facility. So I want to also then touch base quickly on the land uses that are currently proposed in the plan because of that market study is a component of us moving forward and initiating this second phase of work. So I think it's important to kind of focus in and just look at what's in the plan currently, and then talk a little bit more about how we might reinvestigate some of those recommendations. So there's currently 5 different land use categories that are identified within the phase 2 area. You can see them in the bold text on the right in the legend. One thing I will note is that those land uses that are proposed are unfortunately not directly linked to the land uses within the comprehensive plan. So one of the things that we would do as part of the regulatory updates here and adopting any changes to the comp plan land use map is that we have to translate what is in the plan to one of those comp plan land uses going forward. So just adds a little level of complexity here, but I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that. So I'm going to step through each of these really quickly, just so you get a sense of what is currently proposed within the Transit Village area plan. So the first land use is this high density residential 2. It is identified there on the north side of Goose Creek. It would proposes to allow stacked flats and multi-unit residential buildings, 2 to 5 stories in height, approximately 25 to 50 dwelling units per acre. And ultimately, those structures would likely contain underground or structured parking just in order to meet those densities. The images that you can see there on the right actually come from the plan itself. So take those with a grain of salt. They're 15 years old, and don't get too tied in with the architecture. It's just gives you a little bit of a sense of kind of the overall sort of scale that could be envisioned within that particular land use. So the second one is industrial mixed use 1. This is located currently or shown around the area of the old Pearl Street, there to the north of Pearl Parkway. It would allow for light and service industrial, some small scale technical offices, live work units, and perhaps some residential that's mixed in vertically or horizontally within that more kind of industrial, light industrial and service type of use. It anticipates, relatively low FAR and scale, 1 to 3 story buildings and parking either in a structured format or potentially even surface parking being maintained in this area. So the third one is industrial mixed use 2. You can see that primarily that is the large area south of Pearl Parkway, but it does extend just a little bit up to the north and kind of adjacent to Foothills, and then a small portion next to Goose Creek and adjacent to the railroad. This would allow for essentially greater intensity than that industrial mixed use 1 area. So it envisions a stronger mix of residential, office, and industrial uses, could conceivably be 3 to 4 story buildings up to about 1.5 to 2 FAR and structured parking. The fourth one and final that I'll touch base on here is the office industrial. And this is the northern portion of the phase 2 area. You can see highlighted there. Really what this is anticipating or proposing is an intensification of what the existing conditions are in this particular area. If you're familiar with it, it's generally sort of 1 to 2 story office and industrial type of buildings, primarily office. The proposal here in terms of land use would intensify that slightly to 2 to 3 story industrial or office buildings, sort of 0.7 to 1 FAR and a mix of structured and surface parking. The connections plan, the area plan also includes a transportation connections plan. So that's obviously directly correlated with the proposed land uses. And really, we, in conversations we've had internally and also with city council, we don't anticipate any really significant changes to the connections plan here. Even if there were some changes to the proposed land uses, generally the overall connections plan remains pretty well intact. We certainly would anticipate as part of this project going to the Transportation Advisory Board to get their feedback on the connections plan, and this will be part of our community engagement as well to see if there are some minor adjustments that we might need to consider as part of this project. The other thing that the area plan identifies are character districts. So these are somewhat analogous to kind of an urban design description of different neighborhoods or areas within the overall boundary of the area plan. Within phase 2, there are 3 different character districts: the Wilderness Place, Old Pearl District, and then Pearl Parkway. Each one of these has some different district guidelines. There include some recommendations for things such as kind of general building design, the placement and orientation, some pedestrian amenities and wayfinding. So these are also some areas that we plan to investigate as part of the project. And I'll touch base quickly on each one of these. So Wilderness Place, the character district that's to the north basically includes some recommendations to place taller buildings near Foothills Parkway, orient buildings that are along Goose Creek towards the creek itself, include some multi-use paths as well, and include wayfinding. The Old Pearl District similarly kind of recommends taller buildings near Foothills, orient buildings towards Goose Creek, and place parking behind buildings to create a better pedestrian experience. And then finally, the Pearl Parkway area, which is to the south there, would be the recommendations are to improve the North Boulder Farmers Ditch in this particular area and design buildings that are adjacent to that to take advantage of that as a potential amenity. And really, throughout all three of those, there is recommendations to provide multi-use paths for pedestrians and bicycles. So when we started thinking about the phase 2 project, we really began to think about essentially the age of the plan. 15 years on, there's the city has changed significantly. There's now people that are actually living in the phase 1 area where there weren't before. So it's really a different context that we're dealing with now here in 2022 than we were back in 2007. So that's partly why ultimately we went to City Council with two different options back a couple of months ago. So we first presented two options that were essentially, one option was to just move forward with the plan as it is and implement it as it stands today. The second option proposed a slightly longer and expanded scope, but it was to reevaluate some of these proposed land uses and mobility connections to make sure that they are aligned with the comprehensive plan and current market trends and community needs. So City Council ultimately directed us to move forward with the second option. So take the time that is necessary, include a much more robust community engagement process to look at a few different alternatives, and ultimately come back to you at Planning Board and the City Council with a plan amendment to update the plan based on what we learned. They also reiterated the importance of engaging the community on the outcomes of phase 1, so to really learn about what's working and what's not working, and to explore this notion of placemaking and urban design, particularly in the phase 2 area, and what the connection is back to phase 1, and really Boulder Junction as a whole. How can we build on the placemaking aspects? So where we are currently, we're in what we're calling task 0, which is basically scoping of the project. We are getting very close to kind of wrapping that up, and you're really kind of the last stop before we finalize the scope and hope to formally kick the project off in early Q1 of next year. So we are moving forward with the project scope, the schedule, developing a budget and a scope for that market study that'll be required as one of the early tasks moving forward. And then we move into task 1. So as I mentioned, we hope to really get this moving, actually starting to move already here through Q4, which is the background inventory and the phase 1 report that I mentioned. So we have already started work on that, but then formally would kick off some of the more community engagement and outreach activities in Q1 of next year. I think the key area here, the key component of task 1 is really to analyze some of those outcomes of phase 1, talk to people that are living there and really understand how that is working for people that are living there now. Also understanding that it is still a construction site. There's still a tremendous amount of construction activity, so it is not a fully complete place yet. And so we have to make sure that we take in that information and understand that as well. It will still take a little bit of time for that to really formally kind of come into its own. Task 2 then is really where we get into the analysis of the plan and where some changes might actually occur. So this is our needs assessment, alternatives, and preferred approach task. So this is when we will be reaching out to the community and gathering a lot of information, and also meeting with yourselves and other boards to really explore some potential changes to the plan itself. So we will develop alternatives to those land uses that are currently proposed. look at evaluating those and ultimately come up with a preferred approach for those land uses and potentially the transportation connections and the urban design and placemaking aspects. The market study that I had mentioned that would be part of our task one will ultimately then also feed into this needs assessment and provide information to really understand what the current anticipated land use needs are. Task three then would, which we hope to initiate by the sort of end of summer or moving into the fall of next year, which would be the plan amendment itself. So we would move forward with the plan amendment adoption process, and we hope to include the comprehensive plan land use map updates as part of that process. So really bring those two things together as a package through planning board and ultimately city council, which would then allow us to move into task four. And there's a little bit of overlap here when we have a good sense of a preferred alternative where we can really move into the implementation steps. So developing an implementation strategy that really looks at the infrastructure needs, the financing requirements, and identifying those responsible parties and the priorities to get those things done. And then moving very quickly into task five, which is the regulatory implementation. So I mentioned we don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but it could involve some zoning code updates, perhaps expansion of the form-based code, expansion of the general improvement districts. There's a number of things that we will be evaluating and hopefully implementing by early of 2024. So finally, just in summary, we anticipate the full scope of the project to be about 18 to 21 months. There's a number of staff members that have been identified that are part of the project moving forward, and then engaging other departments as needed. And then from a funding perspective, relatively light in terms of consultant services, but we will need to engage outside assistance for the market study and then also the form-based code updates. If that is indeed something that we do to move forward. So Vivian, I'm going to pass it on to you to talk specifically about community engagement.
Vivian, you're muted, I think.
Oh, sometimes just putting this down doesn't seem to work. Great. Okay, so I'll now walk you through how our approach to community engagement aligns with each project task. To ensure the project team receives the information that it needs from engagement at the right time in the process, and that the engagement is really focused. The engagement plan we shared with you in the memo spells out in more detail all of the different tools that we envisage using to support each task. And thank you, Laura, for already sharing some comments with us by email. So as KJ mentioned, we're in the project scoping phase. And the focus here is to consult with council and with you, the planning board, on the scope of work and the engagement plan. We're also initiating the racial equity instrument to ensure the project uses a racial equity lens for both the process and for also shaping the recommendations that will determine outcomes ultimately. We're in the process of recruiting community connectors, and we'll seek their advice on this engagement approach and discuss the issues likely to be of interest or have an impact on people of color and low-income members of our community. Next slide, please. So during task one, the engagement focuses on building awareness and understanding of the project and of the process to be followed. And we'll take advantage of the amazing opportunity of being able to learn from phase one, so that we make sure we build on those lived experiences to date and the lessons shared with us by a diversity of people, including city staff knowledgeable about the implementation struggles and successes. We'll use the information gathered during task one to further strengthen and elaborate the racial equity instrument as well. And during task one, we'll start reaching out to other agencies like DRCOG, RTD, and the county for updates on their plans and programming that could potentially impact on the project. And by this phase, we should have on board project-specific community connectors who will support the project until its end with advice, intentional outreach to underrepresented communities, and co-design and co-facilitation of some meetings. And we're aiming to have at least one connector who currently lives in the phase one area to work with us. Next slide, please. Here we propose to move into a deeper level of engagement than for the previous tasks, as we expect to have more detailed conversations on preferred approaches for the plan amendment. And we'll do this through focus groups with the stakeholders most likely to face direct or significant impacts, and also ensuring representation of underrepresented communities and different interests. Our engagement focus for task 2 includes first seeking input on potential amendments. Second, discussing and understanding the impacts of different scenarios for these plan amendments. And third, working through constituent-specific focus groups I mentioned that we'll set up to identify preferred recommendations and then subsequently seek feedback from the broader community and yourselves, the board and council, on these refined options and recommendations. Next slide, please. I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about the focus groups, as this is where our most in-depth conversations will happen with the community, starting in task 2, where we discuss the options for plan amendments. And the focus groups do complement the broader community engagement that we'll have, like larger meetings and online questionnaires and such. Focus groups are slightly different than a working group, so they're both designed to have conversations in a smaller group. But working groups, like you may be familiar for East Boulder, for example, typically have representation of different interests and are really useful for that kind of area or sub-community plan. And we're not taking that approach for this plan implementation. So we're proposing to use focus groups to really focus the conversations on the issues to be most relevant or of interest to each constituent type that we're targeting, so we can really have in-depth conversations. And some discussions might need to be more technical in nature than others. And then the project team, including myself, will process that feedback from different groups. And if there's any major points of tension, we can go back to the focus groups if needed. Might be an iterative process. And we'll also be, when seeking feedback from the broader community through the larger meetings, we'll aim to be transparent in sharing the feedback that we've received from focus groups and other tools, and sharing how it's shaping the project team's recommendations. So our proposal is to have a focus group with people living, working, and commuting to or from Boulder Junction, a second group comprised of property and business owners, third group with advocacy groups, and a fourth group with developers and design professionals such as architects, engineers, planners, etc. Next slide, please. During task 3, the engagement will be through public hearings, and the information about the day and the time of hearings and draft documents will be shared through various channels and direct mailings to impacted properties. Next slide, please. And to flesh out the implementation strategy, some of the focus groups would be activated again to talk about specific elements of the implementation strategy and provide their feedback. So we'll have targeted consultations to seek specific inputs on the changes, for example, to the form-based code, or on partnerships to implement major infrastructure improvements as some examples. And council and planning board and the broader community will be consulted as well. Next slide. For the final task of regulatory implementation, the communication here focuses on informing the public of the zoning changes and code updates, and circling back or closing the loop to share how the input received by all stakeholders has shaped the outcomes. We like the example of the East Boulder engagement scrapbook some of you might be familiar with, and we'll have a similar scrapbook to document engagement, not only at the end, but also throughout the process. Next slide, please, and this is my last slide. So I've walked you through how engagement supports each project task and output. And in conclusion, I just want to stress that we've put our efforts into developing a plan that we think will lead to clear, focused, inclusive, and transparent engagement. And will also allow us to have helpful conversations with diverse voices. And we've also built in flexibility to adjust the plan as needed throughout, just to make sure we're always meeting our engagement goals. So that concludes this portion. And I really look forward to your feedback. Back over to you, Chris.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Vivian. So just to close things out, really in terms of next steps, so you are aware, we are here to get your feedback this evening, and then we will make final refinements to the scope of work and the engagement approach based on your feedback, and hopefully then formally launch the project early next year. And with that, I think we will just move into this discussion. So I will flash these 3 questions up again, and then I can unshare my screen so we can see each other. But I'm happy to go back to any slides if anybody has any questions about anything specific that we spoke to.
Thank you. All right. That was quite a nice presentation. I appreciated that.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll open it up to planning board members to try and be as responsive and thoughtful as possible. And just a comment, Laura, I know you emailed some comments, and it might be, I think it would be useful if you spoke about them in this situation also, so that the rest of us are fully, and the public are fully aware of your thoughts there too.
Happy to do that. Let me pull those up. So I I bugged staff about this project twice. First, I sent some general feedback around the time of our November 1st, the first time that we had this item in our packet, even though we did not end up talking about it at that meeting. And then I sent a couple of questions, I think, early this morning that came up upon reread. So I don't want to monopolize the air. So why don't I go into my email and pull up those 2 sets of comments, and we can circle back to me if other folks
Okay.
have questions or comments they want to start with. And John, are we going right to staff's 3 focus questions, or are we doing sort of general questions and comments at this point?
Oh, I think you're welcome to do general questions, comments also, but in an effort to be as responsive to the staff requests as possible, I would like to have some sort of explicit focus on those 3 questions as well. But certainly general comments are appropriate and welcome, I think. So, all right, Mark has his hand up, so you can start out.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to start off with a question, and that is, does the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan inform we'll call it the Boulder Junction Plan? All my notes are written as TVAP, but we'll call it Boulder Junction.
That's okay.
Yeah, the TVAP Phase 2 plan, or is it the other way? I somewhere in the memo, it referred to revising the comprehensive plan based on the final outcome of the TVAP 2 plan. And while I guess I understand that, it also seems to me a little backward, that in the sense that it seems like the goals and the general framework of the BVCP should inform the scope of work and the whole set of plans for the TVAP 2. So if you want to address that, that'd be great.
Sure, that's a great question, Mark. And I think you've got it correct both ways. And because essentially you're right, the comprehensive plan absolutely is the guiding document that will drive a lot of our decision making for the area plan itself. I think the reference to making revisions to update the comprehensive plan was more directly related to if we make changes and we process and adopt a plan amendment for the area plan, we ultimately will need to make land use map changes to the comprehensive plan. So then we would go through that process to update and revise the comprehensive plan map to make sure that it's consistent with what is being proposed through the area plan.
Okay, great. Another question is, so because of our late meeting the other night and keeping you up, and I really apologize for that, and then canning it at the last minute, you have subsequently gone to council Is that right? You've gone to council with the same set of questions, and essentially council has, well, what did council say to these questions? And not that our input isn't valued or anything, but I just want to understand, you have received direction by council, is that right?
That's correct. So we initially went to City Council on September 22nd, I believe, with really just that fundamental question of, do we proceed with the plan as written, or do we crack it open and make a few adjustments based on, you know, the context of what we're working with today. Then we had originally planned to meet with you on November 1st, and then we had a larger planning and development services work planning conversation teed up with council on November 10th. So that essentially what happened was, you know, since we weren't able to meet with you on the 1st, we went into that meeting last Thursday and essentially just provided an update that we had refined the schedule and the tasks and really the sort of sequencing of the project based on their earlier feedback. The only other, you know, comments that council provided last Thursday was that, you know, there's an interest obviously to get something concrete, you know, finished next year during the council session while they're still in their seats. And so we had made some adjustments to really move forward and bring forward that plan amendment process. We had originally kind of proposed to do some the planning work and the implementation work kind of together. And ultimately it made more sense to front load the plan amendment, really lock that down and understand where we're headed, then move into the implementation phase. So that was really the major outcome from the discussion last Thursday.
Okay, last question. Will the TVAP2 or Boulder Junction Phase 2 plan have its own set of TDM standards and similar? I mean, the Phase 1 had its own set of TDM that were quite innovative at the time, and everything. And so it is ultimately the outcome that TVAP2 will have its own set of TDM standards and expectations and guidelines.
I think that's right. You know, we haven't gotten into a lot of detail with our transportation colleagues yet. And ultimately that will be part of that implementation strategy task, which is task 4, where we'll be working interdepartmentally to understand what are going to be the needs from stormwater's perspective, from transportation's perspective, and where can we make some tweaks and adjustments. You know, it's, to your point, the TDM measures that were implemented back in the late 2010s or the early 2010s, I guess, that, you know, they were innovative for the time, but here we are again 15 years beyond what those were originally stated to be. So there's probably some adjustments that we want to make. Ultimately that would manifest itself through those regulatory updates or the implementation phases a little bit later in the project.
Great, thanks. Okay, I'll have some comments later, but thanks for those questions and answers. Thanks.
Okay. Laura.
Okay, so I'll start off with the feedback that I initially provided with the November 1st meeting. Does planning board have any feedback on the draft scope of work? I said that I think the scope is appropriate, especially given that there have been some significant changes in expectations around transit in this area. And I really like the fact that there's an effort to go back and look at Phase 1 of the Boulder Junction area plan and learn lessons from that and do a market study and potentially readjust, because what we thought was going to happen 15 years ago, it might look a little different. I have some other questions that are related to that, but I'll hold on those for now. But that was my initial feedback. Yes, I think the scope is appropriate. The question about incorporating additional placemaking detail as part of a plan amendment, I'm generally for it. I think it's a good idea. I like the idea of having different like mini neighborhoods with different feels. But, you know, I think it was pretty evident that staff are perhaps, well, it seems to me that staff are perhaps feeling like there's not enough detail in there. And, you know, when Christopher went through the slides, they seemed pretty similar, right? Like it wasn't like Wilderness Place has this character and Old Pearl has this character. It was more like, well, when you're next to foothills, the buildings can be taller. And if you're near a creek or a ditch, face it. But there wasn't a lot of distinguishing character for the district. So I think that that is a good idea. And, I had initially thought, well, maybe the place types in the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan provide a model for that. I'm not sure how useful a tool that would be, but I just put it forward as something to think about. That was my initial feedback there. And then the third question about community engagement, this is where I'm just like overflowing with love for the plan as it is written, because that, this is kind of my near and dear to my heart and soul. There are a lot of really good best practices that are embodied in the community engagement plan. I do think that staff were very thoughtful about tailoring the level and type of engagement to the different phases, and I thought that they were appropriate each step of the way. So you don't need to do full bore collaborative engagement for every step of the process. Sometimes the goal is to inform people and make sure that they have opportunities to participate at council and at planning board and that sort of thing. So I thought that that was very thoughtfully phased. Really, really love the use of the racial equity instrument. I think I heard from staff that this is the first time that Planning and Development Services has really applied the racial equity instrument, especially to a project of this scale. So that's going to be innovative and pioneering, and I can't wait to see and talk about it as that evolves. So thank you, staff, for being brave and pushing that tool forward. Again, love using the outcomes and lessons learned from phase one, including the analysis of benefits and impacts on underrepresented communities. I mean, this is really great stuff to say. We had a goal, and one of our goals was to serve a certain population. How did we do? Let's look back and let's really be honest about that and learn from it and try to replicate our successes and maybe do even better in phase two. So wonderful stuff. Love the use of community connectors for East Boulder. Having our two community connectors, Anna and Letty, at the table throughout the process. I know it was a learning process and there were some bumps along the way, but it was just absolutely invaluable to have that connection. I see John is smiling. I think John perhaps felt the same way with the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan. And I don't know if everybody on planning board and all the members of the public who might be listening or watching know what that community connector program is. If staff want to talk a little bit more about that, that might be a good thing to do tonight. But some of the other things that you talked about, walking tours, really make it vivid and memorable experiences. I love that you're using walking tours as part of your public outreach. Love the use of the focus groups. And we got more detail about that tonight. That sounds like a wonderful plan. In addition to the open houses, the community meetings, the Be Heard Boulder, like you're hitting all the right notes. You're using all the right tools. Different people want to participate in different ways. And I really love that we're providing all those opportunities in a way that is also practical and allows staff to get their work done. Love that you're really defining the decision space and setting clear expectations around these are the things that are up for change. We're not reopening everything around the goals and the vision of the plan necessarily. It's like, we really want to look at land use. We really want to look at connections. We really want to look at character districts. So I think setting those kinds of expectations right out of the gate is really good. A lot of planning processes go off the rails because people walk in with an expectation that doesn't match what's on offer. So that's really good. And I had asked a question about how underrepresented groups were being defined for the project. And it is those groups that Vivian mentioned in talking about the advocacy groups, like youth and seniors and underrepresented minorities, low income, things like that. So I thought that you hit all the right populations. And I know that the community connectors do bilingual outreach. I couldn't think of anybody that you missed. So I'll stop. I've been talking too much, but a lot of praise for this communications and engagement plan.
Thank you.
Thanks, Laura.
Lisa.
Is that me, John?
Yes.
Sorry, there was a loud child in my ear. Yeah, I mean, I think very similar, so I won't speak for too long just because I think we've heard wonderful things from other planning board members. But I think overall the draft scope of work is really appropriate. I appreciate the questions that staff has obviously carefully considered and already brought before council in terms of how to scope it and thinking about how the first phase was developed and what's working and what's not and what conditions have changed and so on. So overall scope of work looks great. Obviously, it'll be more refined over time, but that's what it's designed to do, is get narrower as we go. Placemaking detail, I think that's a really smart thing to call out, because I think that's one of the things that we kind of tried to do with the first area, and obviously with not having the trains, that didn't help. But yeah, it doesn't quite have the sense of place that you might wish for when you think about the main plaza and kind of the way that it's developed. And the trees will grow, hopefully. And it's not super legible from like the main thoroughfares, right? It would have been legible from trains, but we didn't get trains. And so now it's like this. Anyway, I'm glad you're thinking about placemaking. I think that's really wise. And then finally, yeah, I think the level of community engagement is both robust and wonderful and appropriate, given the scale of this area. And then one other thing that I'm sure you're thinking about, but I'll just bring it forward because I'm sure staff's on it. I'm sure council will think about it. I'm thinking about it. Is just to understand what's happening with industrial writ large. And I know that that's something planning is digging into across East Boulder and across Boulder in general, but I always think about that. And this parcel, I think, is completely appropriate for this kind of plan. It's not that, but just every time we kind of chip away and lose this industrial here, lose it there, and lose it, I just wonder. So yeah, I think that summarizes my feedback, and I'm excited to see where it goes from here.
Great. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you. Let's see, who hasn't spoken? ML, do you have any thoughts for?
I do. So I have two just general questions, or maybe one's a thought. So I think it'd be interesting to hear if there are any initial thinking around the original transportation dream at this point for the site. I mean, that's a huge impact. I didn't see it show up again and again, but just talk about in the new scope, is there going to be a pivot away from that and toward what? So do you have some?
Yeah, it's a great question, and we are most certainly wrestling with that ourselves. I don't have a crystal ball, but I do think that there is a fair amount of optimism that certainly the regional bus service will return in some form. I know RTD already has it on their plan. It's basically it's a ridership question and a staffing question for them to get enough drivers to be able to bring a few of those regional lines back into the transit center. Currently, RTD is also exploring something called a peak service rail study, where essentially they are looking at the feasibility of running 3 trains in the morning from Longmont to Denver and 3 trains in the afternoon, the opposite direction. And this would be one of the stops as part of that project. So our staff and transportation, community vitality are all part of that sort of working group with RTD, with their consultants and a number of other municipalities sort of along the line to explore that. So I think that the other thing that's floating out there that I think people have dreams of is the Front Range passenger rail,
Right.
Which is essentially Cheyenne to Albuquerque in the biggest vision. So there's a lot of discussion about these items. I think the one thing that we need to make sure that we do is that we, at the very least, think about it and plan for it if it does happen, because if we don't and we gobble up the space or the connections that are needed in order to accommodate a platform and that type of thing, we've lost our chance. And so, we're already at least trying to make sure that through the planning process, we're setting aside room for platforms or extensions of those, because the size is different depending on if it's passenger rail versus just kind of a peak service rail thing. So again, I think that's going to evolve over the next, 12, 18 months as we move through this process, but most certainly we'll be engaging with RTD as part of this project to make sure that we have the latest and greatest information that we can include in the process and communicate that to folks.
Thank you. I really appreciate hearing that it's not just RTD, right? That there's the regional rail and the Bustang. It doesn't come to Boulder, but it's out there and it's new.
Right.
And that we're not just holding on to kind of one provider. I appreciate that thinking. And yeah, it would be, we don't want to lose sight of the opportunity to be as connected as we could be with transportation. But yet, there's voids right now that how do we deal with that? So perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much. Another general question is, I think in the 15 years, it's been 15 years since the first plan. Are there, in the proposed scope, is there any environmental equity filter that will be informing the project? I mean, we've taken ourselves to the brink of climate emergency, and that's kind of different than what we were before. We all knew it was there, but nobody was, we're there. And I'm just curious, I didn't see anything of that nature in the thinking of how do we propose an evolution, of this pieces of land here that intentionally account to the environment.
Yeah, another great question. This was also a topic shared by a couple of council members as well to, ensure that as part of our outreach and engagement approach, we're talking with EAB and certainly our climate initiatives department to, look at, are there zoning strategies or regulatory updates or other kinds of things that could, that we could apply here, or even some design elements of, particular landscape requirements and other kinds of things like that could address that, at least on the smaller scale within this particular area. So looking at urban heat island effect and tree canopy and other kinds of things, more sort of natural climate systems. That is certainly something that we would be interested in exploring and will be part of our, part of just kind of that information gathering as we initiate the outreach approach. The good news is there's a number of landscape architects on the planning team that are that are doing this work, and so we have shared interest and I think understanding of some of these elements, and so there's most certainly, I think, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a specific focus of the project, but it will absolutely be an element that we'll be looking at.
Yeah, I think I would encourage the thinking of creating a filter, so that if you're looking at the buildings, what does an environmental filter look like? I mean, you mentioned a few things, the heat islands, colors, materials, reflectivity, ability to manage stormwater on site, all of these phenomena that show up in green building rating systems and all. Then there's, as you started to mention, the landscape ones, the transportation ones, the road ones. All of these can be informed to do better. And it would seem to me that at the scale of a plan, it might behoove us to take the fact that we can create a lens like the equity lens that you're applying, and do one for the environment, so that it is holistic. It isn't separated out, but we're talking about this. How does it inform, the people and the diversity and the this and that? How does it inform the impact to the environment, and material use and on down through. If the zoning changes precipitate the change, which means that there's going to be deconstruction, there's going to be removal of how is that actually going to be deconstructed and be a positive thing, something that can go toward reaching environmental goals rather than let's just get rid of all this old stuff.
Sure.
These are strategies that can be suggested. And again, if you have a filter that people have to kind of walk through as they're doing their developments, it prompts that kind of thinking that, you know, Boulder talks about in the BVCP, that we want innovation. You know, we want these things solved in a not just a practical way and a functional way, but in a marvelous way. So those are my two kind of general questions. And I do have comments about each of the key issues, but I will let other people make general comments as well. I think everybody, well, anyway, John, should I talk about the individual ones or should I
Yeah,
let somebody else go?
No, if you're ready to, if you have your thoughts in order, let's not lose them.
So on the key issue one, I absolutely totally appreciate learning from what's been done and then seeing where the disconnects might have happened or not happened, and did we hit a goal or not hit a goal, all that. So I think that is just obviously a brilliant way to move forward. So A and B make sense. I didn't understand some of the C on that question. 3 items is being out of scope, and I'm not sure exactly what that means. And so I'm not sure how to give feedback. And especially I was curious about the detailed design of individual development projects and detailed design of interest. So what are those?
Yeah, but basically we just wanted to clarify that there are certain aspects of the process that we won't get to a certain level of detail or we won't be addressing through the project. So, oftentimes community members or others, are interested in diving into the detailed design of a project, but that's just not within the scope of the project. That's all we were trying to, define there.
Okay, perfect. I was going to say, isn't this a big planning project? So I agree. They are out of the scope, and let's keep them out of the scope because they shouldn't be in the scope of this. So perfect. I'm good with the key issues, and I think that you're on I love that you're moving forward with all the knowledge that you've gained on part 1. Question number 2, the placemaking details. This is a tough one because I think the placemaking details will come out of your investigation as to what exists. Because these aren't, if they're going to be true and real, it's going to be because they've got, the patina on them, they've been there. And people see the value in it and recognize it. Oh, that's the place where, X, Y, or Z happens. And I think finding those pieces will come out of your process of inventorying and talking to the people who, I don't know that anybody lives there, but works there. Mm-hmm. And what's the historical knowledge of those people, harvesting all of these dimensions, because I don't think placemaking is something that comes off of a drafting table or a program. It comes from the place itself, and it'll be, I think, task of the talented planning team to uncover that and identify it. And I support a process of finding that. I think that will add immense value to the plan. And I love that you're thinking about that where are we? Where is this place? And how do we actually identify it? how does it identify itself, I think would be the first question. And go figure, I'm sure there's stuff there. I personally haven't had that much experience in that particular area, but I'm sure that there are things to be found. And so I would absolutely encourage, but I would encourage placemaking to come from within, not from outside down, but from inside out. Will be the most powerful and the most authentic. So that's my comment on number 2. And number 3, I don't think anybody could say it better than Laura. I mean, the enthusiasm about what people have to say and how people really are they're the reason, right? We're doing this so that we can create community, so that we can be a place and we're not just the generic development. And I think that going into as many communities as you've identified that you will be going into, and with the intent that you really want to listen and say, well, what are we seeing? What are we missing? What didn't happen? All of these things I think are just brilliant. So I do applaud the number 3, how you're going to approach the community, both the community that is already there, the community that got moved into the phase 1, and then the people that might be thinking about, living there or being in there. You talked about the commuter. So, and then of course the professionals that might have something to say, which don't either maybe live or work there, but are part of the community as well. So I appreciate the scope, the broad net that you're casting to get the feedback. I think that really speaks to the things that the planning department values, that, the community matters. So thank you. Thank you for that. And I appreciate, oh my gosh, ton of work you guys have done just to get to the point of articulating what are we doing, because it's important not to just march forth, right? So my congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, I'm sure that others have additional comments too. I have just a couple of thoughts. Couple of them dealing with substance and some of them dealing with the process. And I understand that we're at this early stage where process may lead to the changes in substance, but just in looking at the material that's been presented so far, and your comments about that you're in contact with RTD and other transportation agencies, I'm very happy that you are. My thoughts are that it seems to me that there needs to be some significant attention paid to integrating this area transportation-wise and connection-wise with the rest of the town, because the railroad is a convenient barrier in many cases to movement. And this is nothing new to you, but just in looking at the connections scheme, it seems to me that it's not as permeable as one might hope. And so I hope there'll be additional focus on that. And the second substance aspect pertains to the service level for various cultural and social needs that one should expect particularly in residential areas. And there's a proposal for a dinky little green area, and then possibly improving the conditions along the irrigation ditch that goes through there. And both of those are very scanty, and it's several blocks to the nearest additional parks or cultural facilities in that area. And so I think that there needs to be explicit attention paid to the levels of service for those aspects of life. And it's a standard thing to include, but it's also easy to forget about. So that's why I'm mentioning that here. And then with respect to the process, as Laura mentioned, we both participated quite actively in the East Boulder planning effort, sub-community planning effort. And I think there's a lot to learn. One of the important parallels is that really there's hardly anyone living in this area right now. And so the way in which one gets coherent response from those interested will be a real challenge. You know, likely a lot of the land is almost fully owned by commercial interests there. And so they'll certainly show up and participate because they have a financial stake in the outcome. But how we get the additional parties involved that we want to be involved is a challenge. And I think what Vivian has laid out makes a lot of sense. All of those groups need to be included, and there needs to be explicit efforts made to include them. But one group that it seems to me didn't fully get included was generally including the city at large, I might say. And that's particularly important because there's so few residents in this area, and so much of it is owned by commercial interests, that it seems to me the interests of the city at large need to be somehow explicitly considered and included. And it's a challenge. I'm not sure how one best does that, but my perception is that in the process that you've laid out, that it's not obvious to me how that gets dealt with. Anyway, those are process-related issues. But I am very happy that you're explicitly trying to learn from the past and learn from other planning efforts that have recently been concluded and have similar objectives. So congratulations. I'm very happy about that.
Good, thanks. Those are great comments.
Oh,
Gentlemen,
go ahead.
Those are good comments. Thank you.
Christopher, did you want to respond in some way or add on?
Vivian, if you've got any response, I guess specifically to the question or of how we engage the community at large, that portion of the engagement approach may not have been as clear or explicit. So maybe if you can touch base on that.
Yeah, sure. And it's something we did think about as well, because people don't live there. And so I think, we've thought a lot about like how to make it convenient for the focus groups. So if people prefer to meet online, we will try to make the meetings online so that people aren't spending too much of their day commuting here and there, and do our best to make these meetings efficient. For underrepresented communities, we at the moment, we don't have a specific like Spanish speaking group, but we might do that and kind of try to provide some incentive, some food, or go out to the community to make it very easy for people to participate. And also we have an advocacy group as a focus group. So these are members of the community who I would consider part of the broader community, who are pretty active and up to date on what's happening, who would be very much encouraged to join the advocacy focus group. From the transportation and mobility kind of interest, and people living with disabilities and equity agendas. And so I hope through there we can get some good participation. And then we will also, at a couple different milestones, have community-wide questionnaires through Be Heard Boulder. So we won't use that tons, but we'll use it strategically. And we'll also have a couple of broader community meetings where we're providing updates, sharing where we're at, sharing the feedback we've received, and early recommendations and sort of next steps. So we're using the focus groups to try to have these targeted conversations, but being mindful that we need to hear from the broader community as well. But we'll evaluate how we're going and adjust if needed. Because like you said, it'll probably be challenging. I appreciate that though. Thank you.
Laura.
I do have a few additional questions. I just wanted to say that on that point, one thing that East Boulder subcommunity group did to try to get at, you know, the people who don't live in the area but might want to, or the people who don't currently go to shops and restaurants in the area but might want to, is that they surveyed some of the people who are employed in that area, thinking that that might be a kind of a reservoir of pent-up demand for people who might want to live in the area or shop in the area or go to additional restaurants or bars or evening entertainment, and get some ideas from them, since they're people that are already familiar with the area and could comment on, you know, would you live here if the type of housing you prefer were available, and that kind of thing. So there's some precedent there.
Yeah.
So
That's great. Thank you.
sure. So I did want to ask a few questions and make a couple of other comments. There are some definitions that I just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page about, that I think people have asked before, but I just want to make sure we're all on the same page about what is a stacked flat, what is a loft, and then there was a term that was used, non-traditional housing, in terms of talking about the Old Pearl District. So what does the city mean when you talk about stacked flats, lofts, and non-traditional housing?
Yeah, good question. And, you know, I can't see into the mind of the planner in 2007 that wrote those words, because I probably would have chosen some different terms, because they are somewhat vague. So a stack, you know, I guess the way I would interpret that is, you know, a stacked flat is essentially, I think, what we would consider and know as a multi-unit apartment or condominium building, where you've got vertically stacked units, whether they be for rent or for sale. A loft might be some kind of a mixed use building that might have commercial or industrial on the first floor and a residential unit or residential use up above. And then I went back and I looked at the reference to the non-traditional housing and how it's used in the context of that Old Pearl area. The way I would kind of interpret that is that you know, it could either be interpreted as something non-traditional as like a live work unit where there's a combination of residential and commercial uses in the same unit itself, or just sort of the non-traditional notion of having residential uses in an area that has historically been more of an industrial or service type of area. But I don't think there's any formal sort of consistent application of those terms or definitions within our city lexicon.
Great, thank you for that.
If I can just say, I think in the past, occasionally, for example, co-ops and other ways of organizing people's living arrangements have sometimes been put into that category.
Non-traditional housing. Yeah, that's another good example. Yep.
That's a good point. Next question. We didn't talk too much tonight about the form-based code, and I apologize. I'm coming into this new. I wasn't involved in the earlier phases of the Boulder Junction work. Can you just talk a little bit about, if I'm understanding correctly, form-based code was developed for the phase 1, and is that also going to be just sort of straight applied to phase 2, or that's part of what you're examining, is whether there should be changes to that for phase 2, or like what is the thinking around form-based code for phase 2, and how does that relate, if at all, to this idea of urban character districts?
Yeah, that's great. So you're correct that the form-based code as it exists today was developed for and then applied to that phase 1 area. There's also some form-based code that applies to the Alpine Balsam location as well, that is separate from this. But we certainly anticipate that there could be an application of form-based code to the phase 2 area where it's appropriate. Again, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. So if there are categories and building types and that type of thing that would be applicable to similar land uses over in the phase 2 area, we would look at applying those. But we also, again, we're 10, 15 years on from that form-based code. And so there is an interest in evaluating, again, what's been working, what hasn't been. Are there some strategic modifications that we can make so that it works a little bit better or is more efficient, from a staff perspective, from an architecture perspective, and make those adjustments if we were to apply it to portions of phase 2. And it's also possible that once we go through the process and understand what the recommended land uses are and ultimately what some zoning recommendations are, it's possible that there could be areas where the form-based code maybe just doesn't make sense, and we would just move forward with our typical application of the zoning code as it is today.
Okay, thank you. And do staff see a connection between form-based code and those character districts, or is there not really a connection there?
I think that when again, without having the benefit of history, I think that the intention of those urban character districts within the Transit Village Area Plan and how they're applied, I think the intention was that there would be a sort of recognizable theme or character of each of those areas, and conceivably you could potentially try to work that into the form-based code. The form-based code, I will say, is more probably more relevant to the overall sort of size and scale and organization of structures within the area, and perhaps less so on the sort of quality of that area. So I think what we would do is, if we were to apply the form-based code, we would certainly utilize that to manage the overall intensity and height of buildings and that type of thing. But in terms of those character districts, I think we would probably lean more on the side of like a design guidelines approach, or just some other recommendations that get into some of the more qualitative aspects of those neighborhoods in those areas. So I don't think there's a direct connection between the two, but it's certainly something we can be exploring.
Okay, thank you. And then just one more comment about the neighborhood character districts or the urban character districts. I don't know if there's been thought given to connecting that to the public art element of this plan, but that intrigues me and kind of excites me to think of that there might be like a theme to the kind of public art that relates to the history of the place, as ML was talking about. Just a thought. I have a couple more questions. John, do you want me to keep going, or do you want to
sure, go ahead.
Okay. I'll just try to plow through these. So I have a couple that might relate to the market study or might relate to the community outreach, or both. In the Transit Village Area Plan document that was written 15 years ago, it talks about how the types of households that tend to seek out transit-oriented development. This is a direct quote from the document. The types of households that tend to seek out transit-oriented development: singles, couples without children, the elderly, and low-income minority households, are also the types of households that are projected to grow the most in the Denver region in the next 25 years. So kind of, if I'm reading that correctly, projecting a growth in the populations or in the demands for transit-oriented development. And I guess I'm wondering whether, do we have more data on whether that prediction has come true? Are you seeing a rise in demand for transit-oriented development? I hope so, but I'm wondering if we have more data about it, and if we don't have more data about it, will we plan to get some through this process in some way, either through the market study or through the community outreach? And that is related to my other question around, there was a housing choice survey or a housing preference survey that was done in 2014. And a major takeaway for some folks was people would move here, but they really prefer houses with yards, not stacked flats and live-work units and things like that. And I'm wondering if there's any thought to trying to update that or get more data, either through the market study or through the community outreach in this process, because that seems like a big question, right? We're planning to add quite a lot of housing to our city that is transit oriented, and we think that that's a good idea. And it would be nice to know if the data supports that.
Sure. Yeah, so I think we'll probably attempt to answer that question in a couple of different ways. I mean, part of the engagement approach is to really try to speak to the folks that are now living in the phase 1 area and get a sense of the households that are there, why they're there, what drew them to that place. It could be affordability, it could be a number of different reasons. So try to get to, some more, I'd say anecdotal information from that perspective. The market study, because that is required to ultimately prove out that, the demand for the proposed land uses, I do think that there's an opportunity to dig into those questions a bit and understand what's driving that demand and what household types is driving that demand. So if we come back with, if the market study comes back with recommendations that say, yes, residential is high, is high demand in this particular area, we'll want to dig into that a little bit and understand, what types of residential and why is it that, there might be high demand opportunities in this area. As far as the housing survey that you referenced from 2014, I'll have to circle back with Housing and Human Services to, just to understand if they are anticipating updating that or if that's on a schedule of any kind for regular updates. I'm not exactly sure. But, so I don't know if we'll be able to really get to a very specific answer on that quote or on some of the, where we're at in terms of the data, but certainly through the market study and some of our own outreach, we hope to probe that question.
Great, thank you. Two more. In the packet, it talks about, trying to achieve the city's overall housing goals by offering an incentive for developers in select zones to provide more permanently affordable housing than is currently required. And then it also talks about like a density bonus, particularly for projects in the mixed use 2 and high density residential 2 areas that provide above that percentage of required affordable housing. And I looked at the map and I do see that there is no mixed use 2 and just a small percentage of high density residential 2 in the phase 2 area. And I'm just wondering whether this idea of providing a bonus for going above and beyond, giving us more units of permanently affordable housing, is that something that's going to be applied in this phase 2? Is that something that you're thinking about maybe expanding that incentive program, or is that maybe something to consider?
Yeah, it is absolutely something to consider. So I think for sure, some kind of incentive program or density bonuses are on the table. That is something we'll be exploring as part of probably more later as we move into that task 4 of regulatory updates and kind of the implementation strategy. However, that'll be based on some of the potential changes that we might make to those land uses. So while there's only a small area of that high density residential 2 land use proposed in the phase 2 area currently, that could certainly change through this process where we understand there might be more of an appetite for some of those more mixed use areas or additional areas of higher density residential. Or we may also look at the way that those incentives are currently applied and expand the use types, the land use types, to where those incentives could potentially be applied. So I think all those questions will be explored and are on the table at this point.
Very happy to hear that. And you're probably already planning to do this, but just in case, I'll mention that seems like that would be a very fruitful area of inquiry for your look back at phase 1, like how many projects took advantage of this bonus and what was the outcome and what did it cost the city. I think this is one of the challenges that we have with the affordable housing program and the bonus that we currently have, exchanging height for additional affordable units, is you don't actually get that many affordable units. It's certainly better than not getting them. But just taking a clear-eyed look at what is it costing us, what are we getting, and can we do better? Sure. And phase 1 seems like a very fruitful avenue for exploration. And then my last question, I think ML really covered this around, has the vision for the area changed at all based on the changed expectations for what rail service and transit commuter options might be available? So if you had anything to add on that, it sounds like no, because the vision that's explained in the plan is that this Boulder Junction area is really going to be a destination. It's going to be very pedestrian oriented, that you expect a lot of foot traffic. You expect a lot of people coming in, not just to land at Boulder Junction and then take another bus down to Pearl Street and walk the Pearl Street Mall, but to really enjoy this place called Boulder Junction and that it has its own draw. Is that still the vision?
Yeah, I think overall it is. And I think that, this kind of comes back to the point that we're trying to make where we're really hesitant to reopen the plan from, soup to nuts and completely overhaul it. And we really want to, the overall vision and recommendations still ring true. And we want to make sure that we're just strategic in the areas where we think there might be a need for some updates and adjustments. One thing I will mention is that we did kind of a staff walkabout a couple of weeks ago with members from really a number of different departments, including community vitality and transportation and community engagement and all of our team. And the phase 1 area is surprisingly pedestrian friendly. Like the outcomes, the physical built outcomes are actually really great from a pedestrian standpoint. And there's, bicycle access and other things like that. I think the challenge is that for those of us that have been around in the neighborhood or in the community long enough and have seen this evolve over 10 to 15 years, when you know what it looked like before and you look at it now, you think, oh, it's done. But it's actually like there's still a ways to go on phase 1 to finish the construction, to actually get people moved in there, to finish the park that's across the street from the plaza and adjacent to Goose Creek. So there's still a number of things that still need to be finished. And then, of course, the whole pandemic and changes to work and now a bunch of layoffs in the tech sector. I mean, it's been a cascade of events. So it's not occupied by humans as much as it will be. And I think that, give that phase 1 area another 3 to 5 years. And I think it's going to really, take on a life of its own and become someplace, much more special than it currently feels today. The goal for phase 2 is the same, is that, any of the street improvements or transportation connections, multi-use paths, very much still a focus on pedestrian, bicycle, and multimodal movement, and not a reliance on vehicles. The transit piece undoubtedly is a huge component of that, and that is something we're still kind of working through. But we have to plan ahead for it and hope that it comes back in a really robust way.
I really love how you're thinking about this. I'll just comment and say that if you are in a car, there's really no reason to ever go to the Boulder Junction area or go through it, because there's so many major arterials that go around it, Foothills, Pearl Street, 30th Street. The place I get my hair cut is in Boulder Junction. And, currently it does not feel like a very car friendly place, which is probably a good thing. There's no reason to drive into it. Unless there's like a particular place that you're going. So I loved hearing how you characterize that it's not quite yet finished, and that it will have more of these special places that will be a real draw for people, especially those arriving by foot or by bike or by transit.
Well, thank you. ML.
Thanks, John. I just wanted to riff on what you talked about in regard to the whole city. If you ask any of us that live here in Boulder, we think of the transit hub as being right the 14th Street RTD station. That's where all the buses come and go out of in Boulder, whether you're going to Denver or even Fort Collins. So I agree with what John was pointing out, which is how is this as a maybe regional transit hub, if it's going to have something other than RTD, because the downtown is an RTD one. How does that connect to the rest of the city? And I agree with Laura, if you don't have a particular reason to be in that area, you're not going to encounter it just as a part of your daily experience. You're not going to be passing by and say, oh, look at that thing there. You're just not. So I think keeping that forefront is, how does it talk to the rest of Boulder? And maybe start with the transit part. It's just like we do have a very active bus system. Unfortunately, the skips don't go over there, and the hops skim it, right? They go right along 30th. those are the ones that a lot of people take on a regular basis to get them to, you know, the most popular and populous places in the city. So how does that connect itself, I think, is an excellent point that John made. And I just wanted to reinforce it because I think it's very real. It's something that's very real. And it feels like that transit thing out there is just kind of something out there. But it doesn't need to be that way. So anyway, thanks, John, for bringing that up.
That's a good point.
Lisa,
Yeah, and I should be staring at a map right now because I'm gonna say something incorrect because I'm not, but I'll scroll and see if I can find it in time. You know, I really like what ML just said, and I think that's kind of the tricky thing, right? Is like, how do you make ground floor retail, restaurants, like whatever else work when the thing that we thought we were building like never showed up, you know? And I can't remember, it might have been the chamber or something, but something I know kept kind of getting talked about. And is it the HOP that runs, but like kind of restoring a more robust Pearl Street transit line, you know, something that's just like running almost, you know, very, very consistently, like on a loop. I know that we, not that long ago, but in terms of Colorado time, like a while ago, there was, I think, a streetcar line, you know, right across there. You know, but something like that, that's just like kind of going, because you do have these big office buildings going in, you know, we do have this change in East Boulder. And so maybe there is a way to kind of activate the space, but I think that instinct to figure out how do we bring people in, and that the answer is transit is a big one. And then I was just looking on the website and trying to figure out if Bustang comes to Boulder. I don't think Bustang comes to Boulder, but you know, like, and I'm sure that I have not been paying any attention to that. So I'm sure conversations are ongoing, or they've decided not to, or it's in discussion. I don't know. But you know, if RTD is gonna RTD, which they're gonna, you know, then look to Bustang, you know, look to other stuff like you were talking about, the, you know, like a major rail along kind of the metropolis, like along the Front Range. You know, how do we activate in other ways if the original partner that we thought we're going to have in service is just never, not never, I'm still a train believer, but if we're not sure when or if that's going to happen. Yeah, because yeah, you don't have the foot traffic or bike traffic or whatever, and without that, I think we can reconceptualize it a different way. But how do you pull people in from that broader East Boulder area, and then even bring them like from Pearl over to there, or, you know, from outside Boulder into that region, and actually give them a purpose for coming there. Venue, I don't know. I'm not saying that you want like a concert venue, but like something.
I mean, a concert venue wouldn't be bad.
I don't know if we have the square footage for it, especially if we're trying to preserve potential connection to transit later, but you know, it's something like that that makes it, you know, a destination in its own right. And then that like programs, right? Because you need programming, you need activation. And I know a lot of effort went into trying to schedule stuff and activate the space at the current phase. And it just, as far as I know, it never really took off. And of course, COVID and the playground's not there yet and blah, blah, blah. But, you know, yeah, if you have a reason why a whole bunch of people come in and don't want to park there, they want to come in by foot, they want to come in by bus, they want to come in, you know, whatever, then you have that regular flow coming through and businesses can kind of survive on that. Yeah, so it's like open air arena. I don't know.
Mark.
Well, I hope I'm not the last person, because I have some feedback, and so I hope someone will end on an up note, because I have a little bit of feedback and it's not all positive. So the first thing I want to say is that, you know, I've spent a bunch of time over in phase one recently, and I can envision how phase one, like Christopher was saying, is going to be in a couple of years. I think it's going to be a great place. I think it's going to be a great place soon, and it's feeling good now in a lot of places. In regard to feedback on the scoping and the community engagement plan, I want to say that I found the memo, the general language, to be kind of dense and bureaucratic. And I know that these are not documents necessarily for community engagement, but I found them to be dense and bureaucratic, and I struggled with them a little bit. And I was confused, and your presentation it helped tremendously. But as I read through, I was kind of like, wait, anyway, I struggled with it. So, which may say more about me than your plan, but I just wanted you to know that I struggled with it. And I know that land use, and this is complex, and this is a big complex project, but every project can benefit, I think, from clarity about what we can do and what we can't do. And I think we've kind of addressed that in goals, but I think that as you engage the community, it's got to be super clear about what the guardrails are, what the limits are, and what you're really seeking input on. Because if you have a lack of clarity about that, then the frequent comments that I've heard in council meetings, on board meetings, etc., was I wasn't heard. This was all preordained. My input was window dressing. And I think that a lot of times that comes from the general public not understanding what the limitations were to their input. And so I just want to make that point. I think our very recent Parks and Recreation Master Plan did a really great job up front about setting out some very simple, straightforward goals and aspirations, so that as you read the plan, it was clear how they were addressing those goals. I also have one, I want to disagree with my other board members, I think, and that is I really struggle with the idea of these kind of siloed focus groups. I have participated in Laura and John, and we've all, as community members, have participated in different types of working groups and so forth. But the ones that I have gained the most from, and I think where my input has been most valuable, both, is ones where I sat directly across the table from someone who I am normally deeply at odds with, and I have become friends with those people. I have learned from them and gained knowledge from their expertise. And I think that that the kind of siloed focus groups has the potential to have people feel like, oh, that was great. We all sat in a room and we all agreed on these things. And then the next group, they all agreed on the things that they talked about, but they didn't really hear the community members, didn't hear the developers didn't hear the low income working people. And so I'm very concerned that is a problematic portion of the community engagement. And I know you guys have worked on this really hard, but anyway, that's my input on that.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Vivian, do you want to comment on that last particular item? On the
Yeah,
focus groups?
sure. I totally hear you, Mark. We thought about that quite a bit, and thought about the pros and cons. So if there's a working group, you just can't involve as many people. And if you have many mixed groups, you also risk not getting into the details, like fully understanding the details of different constituent types issues in detail, and we don't want to have 5-hour meetings. But we also thought about, how can we make sure that people hear what other groups are saying? So we would report back to the groups what we're hearing from the different groups. And we would also share back in the larger community meetings what we're hearing from the different focus groups. And there is a risk that people just want totally different things, right? So if we have that sort of situation, what we thought about is that we would have another focus group if needed with representatives from different groups to do that consensus building. And probably that'll be needed, to be honest. But we didn't want that. We didn't want that to be the starting point, because we will really want to fully understand. And I think different groups will have different needs in terms of the education and awareness also to bring them up to speed. And like property owners, business owners will have really different requirements, and the discussions would be really different, right? So that's just a little bit of our thinking. But I agree with you, we might have to adjust as we go and have that forum for the different constituents. And I totally get what you're saying, like that really rich conversation happens, and it's not like the city trying to bulldoze something. People can hear, people can hear where each other are coming from.
Yeah, I hear you, and I definitely bringing some people up to speed, that is a different task and a different meeting than bringing other people who are intimate or professionals. And yeah, and this is complex. I just don't want us to miss out on an opportunity to actually have people be surprised by, oh, that developer guy, he's actually all right. Now I understand a little more about what his concerns are, and have a developer, have some understanding of the struggle or the needs of other community members, or a business owner that's looking at losing their space or whatever it might be. So anyway, that you get my message. So
yeah, no, I get your message, and we'll
sure.
think about it more. And something else we wanted to do was to make sure we had diversity in the different groups. So in our application for focus groups, we'll ask people like, what is their interest in Boulder Junction, or ask different questions, and then we'll try to form them so they don't all look the same. Like, the focus might be around issues, advocacy issues, but we want to make sure that we have a mix of like people living nearby, people not living nearby, try to just make the groups look a little bit different as well. So that'll be kind of a subjective exercise. And I fully take your comment on board.
Yeah, and I'll just add to thank you for the comments on just the sort of memo and how important it is that we break free of our plannerese that it's so easy for us to fall into, because we sort of live and breathe this stuff all the time. And so, just making sure that as we work through this process, both within our written material and any presentations, to be very clear about what's on the table, what's not, what's up for discussion, what's not, but then also making sure that we can very clearly explain and articulate the complexity of these items. And I appreciate your comment there as well.
Can I just add something to that on Spanish? It's something Sarah and I have been talking about like just using plain language. Like if the English version is really complicated, then nobody's going to understand the translated version as well. And something we're thinking about is even working with the connectors to come up with terminologies for planning language in Spanish, like that they prefer, they think their communities will understand better as well, because there might be like a more correct translation, but if nobody understands it, that's not really useful.
That's great. Thanks.
Laura.
Just to add in on that point, the same thing happens with English speakers as well, like that they will not understand when you start talking about the difference between land use and zoning and character districts. And so I think one of the challenges for you is that some of your audience members will be very sophisticated, like the design professionals and maybe some of the property owners who've been through the planning review process and kind of get it. Because they have that experience, right? They have that education, they have years of working with these terms and with the city. And so some folks are going to want that level of detail of, okay, right now we're looking at the land use map and this is going to translate into the BVCP. And other people, that's just going to be over their heads completely. And you're not going to get, if you try to make that accessible to the public, it's just not going to work. So I think you need to plan for some meetings that go into jargon and plannerese, and some meetings where you really have to take it out of planning language entirely and ask about things like, what kinds of activities do you want to do? What kinds of housing do you want? What kinds of open space do you need? The things that are really going to matter to people and their lives. How do you get around this area? You know what I'm saying. So I'm not going to belabor the point, but I think we ran into that with the East Boulder subcommunity plan, is that staff made such a diligent effort to bring everybody along with every single detail of the planning process that a lot of people just dropped out. Even members of the working group, I think sometimes were lost. And so that's, you know, a longitudinal process with a lot of education. And if you really want to get broad input, sometimes you have to figure out ways to not go so deep, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that was a bit of our thinking with the separate focus groups. Like, you know, we can't ask everyone what they think about the form-based code like that. We need to find other ways to ask them, like, what do they like about their housing, or what do they like about their neighborhood? Like, so during the kickoff phase too, we will put some effort also into like that educational piece also, and try to come up with some short videos and things like that that are accessible, that explains things simply and clearly.
Okay. Any further thoughts? This is your chance. All right. Has this been useful to you, Christopher and Vivian?
Extremely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
Very good.
Thank you for
First
the
of many
conversation.
conversations.
Well, thanks for coming, and thanks for not giving up on us when we were being so difficult to schedule. So
No problem.
thank you. Good
Thank
luck.
you.
Okay. So we'll, I think there's another information issue that I'm not sure who's going to be telling us about it. It's property line elimination.
I think that Charles mentioned to me that was really just an informational item for you. And if there was any questions, you can follow up with he or Shabnam afterward. But I
Okay,
think it's a pretty straightforward thing.
right. Well, it's not something that we have to make a decision on or
Correct.
even give any input on necessarily.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. Well, we're moving right along here. So, matters from the board. I think, Laura, you had one that maybe we won't be able to deal with tonight, but you can describe it.
But John, can I say something about the information item B?
Oh, sure, go ahead.
All I wanted to point out was that, you know, this is, when you look at it, of course, it's an obvious thing to try to do, but once they do that, they now have the opportunity to put an ADU on that property because it meets the minimum threshold for square footage. So that might be in the thinking, is that what do you gain by adding that, what was it, 12-foot, you know, piece to their property, but it pushed them just into the area where they can have an ADU. So I just wanted to point that out, that I think that's a great way to get more properties qualified.
I love that you noticed that detail, ML. It really pays to have an ADU expert on the board.
Well, why would you add this little, because it's a little tiny, you look at the map, you go, wait a minute, what is going on here?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all good.
Okay. Well, anyway, Laura, you had requested some briefing by staff of what City Council was up to, but I think we got a response saying that tonight might not be the most opportune time to do that. Do you want to describe to everybody what you were asking for in the response?
Sure. So last Thursday, City Council had a study session, as I understand it, and Christopher, you probably could describe this better, but regarding planning priorities for the Planning Development Services Department. And I know that some council members made a pitch to reprioritize a few items, things like occupancy limits, ADUs, looking at multifamily housing, that kind of thing. I don't have the full list in front of me. And had asked for an update because I wasn't exactly clear on what the outcomes were and what direction staff was taking from that. And the answer that we got back from Brad was they would absolutely be happy to update us at a future date, but that staff needs to take what they heard and have some internal meetings about it and figure out a direction and then come back and brief us. Did I get that right, Christopher? Please add, correct.
Yes, that is exactly right. Yeah, so Brad is actually away on vacation. So when he returns, we'll debrief and circle back internally with all of our team. Primarily, I would say it has more of an effect on some of the code update work that Carl Geiler and Lisa Hood are working on. Not as much of an effect on our comprehensive planning work plan, but a little bit. So we'll certainly come back to you with an update on that. Hopefully before the end of the year. I think we have tentatively scheduled ourselves in for sort of mid-late December timeframe, December 20th, I think.
Great. Very eager to hear about that. You know, obviously we wish that you could do everything because you're amazing and you do such great work, and we would love to have double the staff in planning and development services so you could just get it all done. But obviously we know that you have limitations and there's only so much work we can ask of you because we want you to have a good work-life balance. We don't always hit that goal as it is. So, you know, really interested to see how these things get rearranged per council's requests.
Okay. Any other matters from the board? I have one that I'd just like to mention, and that is that on Friday, there is a conference here in Boulder about real estate matters that I think some members of our staff will be making presentations. I'm intending to go to that. It's on Friday, and it's organized by you know, the business paper here at the Embassy Suites Hotel on 28th and Canyon. And so I just wanted to mention that, and if other folks are interested, you might look into that. It's an all-day thing, but sounds like there'll be people coming and going for various presentations.
Kind of a related question. Does anyone remember board or staff, what is the yearly or typically yearly annual conference in Boulder where the state demographer presents? I think the chamber often hosts it, and they usually try to have the state demographer come and they talk about like birth rates and growth. Is that the real estate conference or another one? If you don't know, I can try to.
I think that's a different one.
It's
I
a
think
different
that's
yeah.
one that's
that
organized
one's very
by the-
interesting too, just kind of the broad trends and then what's happening in the county. And anyway, yeah, those could be
think,
wonderful one to attend.
I think that's organized by the chamber, by their business development arm or whatever they call it.
Yeah, whatever they, yeah.
And they coordinate with the Community Foundation of Boulder, which puts together this very nice statistics of Boulder's population and growth and changes.
Yeah, I've just always found that a fascinating presentation, you know, whether or not other, you know, pieces of that particular thing. Anyway, you reminded me of it, John. Didn't mean to change the subject.
Yeah, I don't think this is that meeting. In looking at the schedule, it's a bunch of developers talking and realtors and so on. But I just wanted to mention it. I think I'll show up just to hear what they're talking about.
Yeah, that'd be good. John, you might want to double check the calendar. I thought for some reason that was on Thursday, the 17th. So you might just double check the date.
Okay,
I'll show up on Friday and no one's there.
What's the purpose of that real estate?
Oh, November 17th. You're correct. What did I say? Okay,
Right.
Well,
Thursday.
I may not be going then, but
But John, what's
anyway.
the purpose of that? What's the purpose of that conference?
well, I think it's a lot of developers and realtors talking about what they'd like to do and what they're hoping for. I can the schedule, the agenda, which gives a list of the speakers.
Yeah, I
is
think it's
on,
called the Boulder Valley Real Estate Conference. So it
That's right.
includes Boulder, but it also includes other, other municipalities that are in the county and sort of in the area. So I think it's just kind of a broad overview of comings and goings and what people are seeing in the market, and projects that are starting to come online or be constructed.
Right.
Yeah,
It-
I've been in the past, ML, and I just pulled up the agenda at a glance. And so there's like commercial and residential forecasts. I'm sure they'll be talking about interest rates and just, what's already in development, what's coming up. Life sciences, we've seen so
I
much.
was gonna
life
say,
science.
Yeah.
life sciences, yeah.
Yep. Earth, wind, and fire rebuilding. So, what's happening after Marshall and so on. Major developments on the way. Short-term rentals, that's an interesting one. And then climate, water, energy, and weather. So it sounds interesting.
Anyway, I just wanted to make sure you knew about it. It's maybe something relevant for us to be aware of.
Oh, thanks for bringing that up to our attention, John. Is it a come one, come all kind of event, or do you need to register?
Well, they want some register and a registration fee, so I don't know the details. But
Okay.
Typically, the city has been willing to pay for members to attend events like this within reason. So I would say that if you're interested and able to go, I would think the city might be able to reimburse you of the registration expenses.
And is it in person only, or is it hybrid?
I think it's in person.
Yeah, Thursday probably doesn't work for me, but it does sound interesting.
Yeah.
It'd be great if there was a recording, but it doesn't sound like there will be.
Yeah, I'm not sure that'll happen. But yeah, some folks from the city will be there too. Okay. Any other matters from staff?
No, nothing on
All
our
right.
end. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I said nothing to report on our end. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I think we might be able to adjourn at a reasonable time unless anybody else has something we need to talk about. Okay.
Just lots of love and appreciation for our staff. Thank you so much again for the great presentation on Boulder Junction.
That was very good. Thank you.
And thanks to my
All
fellow
right.
planning board members for great questions and comments. I feel like I agreed with almost every single thing I heard tonight, and I'm just feeling the love.
Oh, man, I can't let that continue. All right. Anyway.
Say something controversial,
adjourn.
John.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Good night.